I suppose people just don't know the difference these days, do they? Because that's all they're used to. So
I think that's probably the best point you could make about it, Carl, to be honest, in as much as people that grew up without it understand the value of it and also how it can devalue what is purveying. I think that what most people tend to lose is the idea that just because all the information is available, it doesn't make all information equally relevant.
absolutely, all good.
Exactly. Hey, folks, welcome to the Grindhead Podcast, episode 12. I'm Grindhead Jim, your host here. I'm joined by somewhat of a hero of mine. I first heard of this individual in the early 90s through a death metal band called Bolt Thrower, which I got into and then really got into. And the longer that band trudged on, the more into that band I became. Anyone who will listen, I will tell Bolt Thrower fucking rules. Several years ago, the band dissolved for reasons we'll discuss during the podcast. And later, to my surprise, this individual became part of a new band called Memoriam, which had melded some other aspects of the death metal community, some other members, and gave us something new that still breathed life into that spirit of what really got me into that style of death metal Bolt Thrower represented. And furthermore, at a time when I needed something that I could latch onto. And the voice of both of those bands is none other than Karl Willetts. So I'm very happy to have you on the podcast, sir. How are you today?
Hi there, Jim. Yes, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you. It's been a long time we had this plan, so it's good to finally get around to getting this done, So, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's snowing here in the UK. We've got about, a whole foot of snow, and it's caused complete gridlock to the country, as it always does. It's good to speak to you, mate.
Absolutely. We've been, just a little insider track, we've been on this, trying to get a talk together for a better part of a year. And just schedules just did not mesh for various reasons, and finally we're here, so I'm grateful for that. To put a finer point on what I was saying in the intro, my first introduction to your stuff was War Master, which I enjoyed, but at the time it didn't speak to me the way it speaks to me now. For whatever reason, I was really heavily into like the more blast heavy grind and stuff like that. So it wasn't quite where I knew there was something there. And then when For Victory came out, it hit me between the eyes. I'm like, all of this, like I want nothing but this. And much to my pleasure and surprise, that's pretty much the template for the rest of Bolt Thrower. It just got better and better at that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then
definitely, well, I think War Master was kind of like quite a turning point for Bolt Thrower, very much so. Is a time when we were, in a way, trying to find who we were and what our sound was. So, War Master was a big step forward from the second album, Realm of Chaos, which in turn was a big step forward from In Battle There Is No Law. And, as I say, we were kind of experimenting. There's not a lot of other bands around making that kind of. I think Bolt Thrower sound was pretty unique, really. In many respects. It didn't really fit comfortably into any specific genre. It was what it was. It was Bolt Thrower, and it worked. And it was great. And I think, as you say there, I think once we kind of got to the Fourth Crusade, that was it. That was the formula that worked for us, and we kind of pretty much stuck to that formula for the rest of the band's duration. Because we pretty much went by the adage of. If it's not broke, why fix it? It worked. Yeah. We think we'd seen so many bands around us, our peers, or bands that had influenced us, and we'd liked, go off on one and do an album which sounded, totally different from what they were doing previously, and in many respects, what that did was alienate the fan base and make people think this isn't what I really want to into. So we were quite aware of that concept. So we have built a pretty loyal following throughout our 20, 30 years of doing bolt thrower, and it's a family because people grown up listening to our music. I think there's a very close bond between the people that like Bolt Thrower and the band. I think we kind of are very aware that the band were only in the position that they were through the support they got off people. And as the band evolved, we saw people growing older with us. We kept on seeing the same people come to the gigs there, and then their children. It was almost towards the end. There was always three generations of families coming along to the show. So it's great to see that development through people's lives, and it's nice. It's great to have kind of left that kind of long-lasting legacy and had that impact on people's lives. It's a very humbling experience to hear the stories some people report to me about how our music's helped them through specific periods in their lives when they had difficult times, and that's, for me, that's really achievement done. If we can have that kind of impact on people, then that's a beautiful thing to hear, and I'm very proud of my time in their band. We had some good times.
And to be honest, it's I'm glad you brought up the fact that you are grateful to hear stories of your band getting people through. It is, in fact, of your newer outfit, Memoriam, that I speak when I talk about very specifically getting through something. Just before the first Memoriam record came out, my mother died, and there were two records that I latched onto, and the first Memoriam record being one of them. And because it's very directly about loss and the motivation that you have to find from that. So it couldn't be any more obvious that this is the record I needed.
Absolutely, our timing was impeccable. Obviously, or your mother's timing was impeccable. I'm very sorry to hear about your loss, but nothing worse than losing your mother. But the band Memoriam was born out of that experience of loss and mourning. It's a subject which is, death is a subject. It's a subject to almost like a taboo in many respects. You don't really ever talk about it with people, and until it directly happens. No, it doesn't happen to you, because if you're dead, you're dead. But when you lose your loved ones, your close friends, your family, that's the time when you kind of you react to it emotionally, and you look for things to latch onto, and that's why we created Memoriam at that point, because it was following on from the loss of Martin, obviously. That's been well documented in the past, and also at that same time, Frank lost his dad as well. So Memoriam is a band that was born from that sadness and that darkness. And so the first album in itself, we consider to be a tribute to Martin, but not just Martin, but to all those that we've loved and lost, the fallen in general. The first album very much kind of experiences. It's all about the experience of loss and mourning and sorrow, and it explores those kind of feelings. It's very kind of reflective on those kind of the initial stage of loss. Because grieving is it's a process that we all go through. As you get older, you tend to find that these things happen to us more regularly, which is a sad but true fact. So the first album really much was kind of exploring these themes of loss and suffering, and really we were in ourselves personally in a very dark place. I was in a very dark place, following the loss of Martin. Not just that, coming to terms with losing him was one thing, but then also coming to terms with maybe what I was going to do in my future at that point. It seemed like that everything could come to an end. Boltthrower decided to just put everything on a long time hiatus, and I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do myself? I kind of formulate my identity really through the whole concept of being in a band, and I love performing, and yeah, it was a very dark place to be in when you're going through those feelings of grief. So yeah, I really just basically sat myself down and thought, well, what can I do? What can I do to pull myself out of this situation? Because I can't go on for in this darkness. It's no good for me. It's no good. I've got to try and do something, create something positive out of such a negative, bad experience. So, at that point, I really just had to sit down and think, well, what do I want to do? And it was evident to me that I enjoy being in a band. I like performing live. So I thought, well, okay, let's move forward and start something fresh. I always wanted to work with Whale. I'm very close with Whale. He was the reason I joined Boltthrower in the first place, and we definitely had some unfinished business to get to do complete. Frank also, I've known him for over 30 years, and so he was always going to be involved with what we do. And then we kind of got together just to create a bit of joy, a bit of hope, maybe in many respects, and a bit of just have some fun, to try and kind of recreate those feelings that you get when you're first in a band. Those feelings, just going to the rehearsal room and having a few beers with your mates. That's the bottom line. It's having a bit of fun, a bit of enjoyment, and that's really the whole ethos of why we started doing Memoriam. And it's all kind of grown from there over the past 2 years. So yeah, I mean, we are following that process of grief. Grief sticks with you. It doesn't just go away. It's something that stays with you, but it develops, it changes, time affects it. And I think the second album is very much the next phase, the Silent Vigil. We explore the next phase of grief, which is just maybe a little bit more self-reflective, where you start to, maybe a bit more angrier about things. Maybe you kind of start questioning things that are going on in the world around you. So yeah, I mean, we've got an idea. Memoriam. There's definitely a 3-album kind of concept that we've got in mind to explore this kind of idea of grief. So obviously, we've got the next one kind of almost planned and lined up, and we've already written some songs for it. We've got Dan Seagrave lined up for the album cover already, and we've got the studio kind of prospectively booked. So yeah, we are following a very quick, fast-paced process to explore the theme of grief and loss and mourning. So there you have it.
Gotcha. And it definitely makes a lot of sense when you look at where the band came from, that this is a very stark, direct result of that. What fascinates me, because I look at what you guys are doing to deal with that grief and that loss. And you also bring up the fact that you're trying to reclaim a certain degree of the hope and innocence of first starting a band. I find that when you do things as a result of grief, or as a means to work through, at some point you take all the different elements, and there at some point becomes a celebration of life. Would you say that perhaps the live gig is that portion of that, or where does that come in for you with Memoriam?
Oh, you just clicked out there, mate. But I got the celebration of life.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Poor network connection. I got up to the celebration of life there, which that's one of my classic one-liners, which I always confirm when we play live, that our music is a celebration of life through the form of death metal. We are all kind of getting older together and experiencing all these things in our own lives and sharing the moments when we come together at our gigs. So yeah, it is pure joy and celebration, born of sadness and darkness, and light has come from that. But for me, the whole thing about starting up a new band is is a whole fresh, new experience for me. I've never actually started a band from fresh. I joined Bolt Thrower when they'd got a couple of demos out and they'd already recorded the John Peel session. So I joined them, after the first single left. So doing Memoriam from scratch was a completely new experience for me. And it's been. I always think that in life, the firsts, when you first do something, when you first record an album, when you first hear yourself on the radio, when you first play a certain continent or city, those are the things that got more resonance and kind of always stick in your mind a lot more. But it's an interesting point, and we thrive on that, and we are moving through this experience together.
So do you find that with you having a 3-album arc of, you have a set message in mind, you want to, develop these different phases of loss and grief, what for you, I mean, granted, if you've already got that part planned out, would there be a second arc, or would this morph into something completely different? Like, what do you see going beyond that? Because you seem very focused on that, and that's a good thing. But it does make me wonder what comes after that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the first album, we've produced 2 albums in 2 years, and we do pretty much want to try and keep that pace rolling. We're kind of very aware of our position in our lives. We're kind of all not so young anymore, and you just don't know what's round the corner. From our experiences of life, life is short, so we are grasping the opportunity to do what we can do, and do it when we can at the fastest pace we can. So we do envisage the next album to be out. Maybe not around the same time. We probably will leave it a little bit longer. But we do envisage the next album to be out in 2019, maybe towards the end of 2019. So that follows the trajectory of what we're trying to experience and convey with this kind of like journey we're going through.
Gotcha.
And obviously the visual aspect of what we do in the artwork is provided by Dan Seagrave. That kind of forms almost a triptych that we've got in mind. The three album covers fit together nicely to tell that story as well. So we are, on that trilogy of albums. But beyond that, we are already thinking about what we want to do, and we are doing this selfishly, entirely for ourselves. It's very nice, and it's great that the people are into it and they get where we're coming from, and I think they're enjoying the continuation of the journey, in this other tangent that it's gone off in, and I think when people buy into that and they understand where we're coming from and why we're doing it, I think that really helps.
And that's clearly a big part of why people are latching on, honestly, is the selfishness. I think that shows in the music, because it is so pure in its approach, whereas, and I don't think you'll mind me saying this, Bolt Thrower had an agenda in as much as it was about warfare and concepts of people in war, at war, the effects of it. You can only get so personally involved with that to a certain degree. Yeah. It's great storytelling and it's excellent music, but you're still kind of removed from that depending upon your viewpoint. Whereas Memoriam there's nowhere to hide. There's no veil behind which you can go, well, I didn't mean it like that because this. Like, there's no agenda anymore. It's now, this is us. This is what we're dealing with. How as a lyric writer, how does that change for you? Does that create maybe some fear or apprehension on your part?
Great question. I mean, 30 years of writing songs about war. It's great. And it's formed part of what I'm all about, and it was a fascinating subject matter. But there's only so much you can write about, from that perspective, and until you start to, go over the same topics and issues. And as you say, it's something that, I've never actually been in a war myself. I've never actually been a soldier. I've never been in the military, so it was all really from a distant perspective. So I was very aware with Memoriam that I wanted to create something that was a lot more personal, a lot more reflective of how I feel about the world that we live in, and talk about things that are important to me, my feelings about things, and that's great for me as a lyricist, because with Bolt Throw, there was a formula. It worked. We stuck to that formula. With Memoriam, there is no formula. We've got a completely open blank canvas. We can do what the hell we want, and we do at an alarmingly fast pace. What we tend to do is write something, we're happy with it, don't go back, move forward. We don't tinker with it, we don't overproduce it, we try and keep it as raw as possible, and we move forward, and we write another song, and we move forward in that respect. But lyrically, it's been a fantastic experience for me. I mean, in the past, I've written songs which have had maybe a certain element of social, political content derived from how they're interpreted by the people that are listening to it. But it was always kind of covered within the subtext of the song. But I think I know with Memoriam that I'm maybe a bit older now. A bit more confident in my own ability, and a bit less wary about what other people think of me. I'm quite happy and quite confident to get up on my soapbox and say something about things that I think are wrong or bad with the world we live in. I think really as an artist, as a lyricist, as a creative person, you've got to do that. If I was to not do that at this point, I think I'd be doing myself a massive injustice. And there is things going on in the world that need things to be made comment on. I've got things that disturb me. I've got kids now, so I'm thinking about the future for them, and there's a lot happening in the world. So this new album, I think the first album was very much a transition album for us. We were very aware of maybe the expectations that were on us, from the people that were going to listen to the album, from the record label, from the promoters at gigs. So and even ourselves, we're always going to have that tie, that comparison. So we were very much tied to the chains and the shadows of what had gone on previously with our former bands. So I think that kind of held us back in a way, and we retained a lot of the elements of songs about war. War rages on. You can't get to, but that's all about life moving forward as well. But there was a couple of songs on the first album that started to be a more overtly political. I'm talking about Reduced to Zero. I'm talking about Corrupted System in particular. Those are the two songs that jump out really, that were making a social comment or a political statement. And now with the new album, I think it's flipped even more so. Maybe on the last album it was 80% war, 20% social political content, and it's flipped the other way now. So I think it's 20% war and 80% social political content. The songs themselves are totally reflective about the way I feel about things in life. So there's songs in there that have got a theme of about inequality and racism and the global rise of the right wing and the way the media manipulates people, etc., etc., etc. But also there's a couple of songs on there which are about moving forward and transition and growth and moving to something new, which I think is quite relevant to what we're doing as individuals and as a band. And there's some other personal songs on there. There's one called Nothing Remains, which is about dementia, which is all about my experience with my mother, who's developed that over the past 12 months. So it's a lot more overtly personal and reflective, which again I think that ties into the next phase of the grieving process, which we are going through on this journey. Absolutely. I'm very proud of it. It's kind of almost that I'm working outside of my comfort zone in many respects. I'm used to writing songs about war, so it's been quite challenging to write lyrics that are meaningful and make a statement, and have still got that kind of authenticity, and not cheesy. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm pretty proud with the way they've come out. Yeah, so that's one for me. That's one of the strongest points on the album.
And with that in mind, I mean, you can see that beyond the band itself. Since Memoriam started, that's more or less when I first became aware of your social media presence, you personally, and that's how you and I met. And
I am the Twitter king.
Yeah. Now, I have noticed just even in the last, say, 18 months, that you have just kind of grown into making more definitive statements from a personal nature. Like, for example, more recently, I would say, there's been a much larger presence of anti-racism and anti-fascism statements on your account, which I'm right there with. I mean,
I'm trying to stir the cesspool.
Where does the motivation for that come from? I mean, obviously, we're both from a generation that was the thing, when we were in our teens, but now we're in our 40s and 50s, it's a little bit different. Where do you find the renewed vigor for those viewpoints and the push to really want to make sure that message is getting out there?
Yeah, as you say, it's a cultural thing. It's been there, on the back burner, something maybe I haven't talked about so overtly, but it's always been there. It's been part of after the cultural studies degree at Birmingham University. I live in Birmingham. We are very much a multicultural, diverse society. We live here in Birmingham, and we're very proud of that. It's what makes our countries, or the world, a special place, is accepting cultural diversity and embracing people that are different. That's really what makes up the nature of our country. Definitely makes up the nature of your country.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems we're living in a time where all that is being pushed to one side. We're kind of like in fear of people that are different through acts of terror that have occurred throughout the world. And, as a knee-jerk reaction to that, we are almost blanket blaming the whole of certain specific types of people, and I find that's really alarming. And instead of living in a society where we kind of should having open boundaries and embracing people that do, it seems to be more concern in pushing people away and building walls and vilifying people that are different. And that's really something that I feel very strongly against. I think, and it's happening right across the world we live in. I think that's a really, really dangerous mindset. And it seems to be almost kind of, justified by a lot of the political system that we're living in. The kind of right wing control of the media, and just look at that person that's in control of your country. Is a massive source of inspiration for me. We're going through an issue here in the UK, which is Brexit. We are currently in the process of withdrawing from the European community. For me, that's a really negative experience. I'm very much a pro-European Remain supporter. I always have been. My whole kind of career has been built on the basis of freedom of travel and being able to go and visit other countries and travel around as a musician. And there's so many lies and spins that has been fed to the gullible population to make them vote in specific ways, and they've just been sucked in by it, hook, line and sinker, and it's really frustrating. So I'm kind of using this platform, this privileged kind of platform that I've got, to get up and say something and tell people exactly how I feel about it. I don't really expect to change people's minds, because it seems almost that there is no middle ground anymore. We're in a society where opinions are totally polarized. There is almost no room for debate, because there's one set of ideals, and the other on the left, there's one set of ideals on the right, and there's just a massive clash of ideology. And it's troubling times. So my position to say something is really important to me to do that at this point in my life. And I'm really proud that I've been able to do that with this new album.
And you're clearly doing a great job of it, because there's no question how you feel about a lot of different issues. That's for sure. And I can certainly appreciate and empathize with that for sure. Something that I found interesting from a political standpoint is that for, let's say, the 80s, more so the 90s and the early part of the 2000s, for whatever reason, our country in the U.S., we were shifting towards, we thought we could do no wrong politically, and the UK's government kind of was just kind of following along, kind of a Me Too kind of thing. And now it's reversed.
Yeah.
In as much as soon as Brexit, came down, the UK was like, look what this stupid right-wing shit we did, and America's like, hold my beer. So then we got our president in, but what I find interesting though is that we made that flip. Things are what they are in this country, but what always fascinates me is I can only be as objective as I can being in this country. So I try to get my news from outside of the U.S. because I like to have that global view.
Yeah.
So
you got to get fed by the local spin as well, don't you?
So to kind of drill down, what I'm getting to is that the viewpoint of someone from the UK who is got their thumb on the pulse of what's going on. When you see something like what's been going on lately in the States with these mass shootings, how does that look to you as someone who's in the UK that doesn't have a dog in the fight as far as the U.S. is concerned? What is the perception like for you? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We are all very aware of the political sway that a certain organisation in your country has, the NRA, how much they influence and dictate the decisions that are made on a political basis. Is disgusting. There's so much stuff going on social media. The classic one I saw the other day was the two children, one with the Kinder Egg, one with the assault rifle. One of these things is banned for our protection. That's just it's. And the solutions that they're coming up with, or thinking of coming up with, arming teachers, bringing more guns into the school to solve the situation. Your country is the only country in the world that has this problem, and it's just alarming that guns are so freely available. I know it's something to do with your amendments and the laws that are written as a result of your independence war with us. I think it's time for your country to start to rewrite some of these laws, because they're ancient history and they do not fit in the contemporary society that we live in today. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and all you're going to get is more shootings, more children being killed in schools. And the only way to address that is to stop the guns. It's they're saying, well, it's a mental health issue. It's anything but the guns that are causing the issue.
It's a combination of things, and it's something that people are not always willing to discuss. I mean, as two people who came up in a punk and grindcore scene that was anti-corporation, anti-government, anti-control, to now see, as of yesterday, that two of the largest corporations in this country, Sam Walton's Walmart and a larger sporting goods chain that you would not be familiar with, they both came forward, and these are right-wing corporations, came forward and said, we're banning any type of assault rifle that includes certain rates of fire, caliber. We're raising the legal limit of purchase to age of 21, so on and so forth. They went down this whole list of all these things we're asking for in laws, and these corporations that I don't trust are stepping forward to do this of their own free will. And I'm like, what the bloody hell is going on when these corporations that I wouldn't trust to sell me a can of dog food
Yeah,
are stepping forward, but the government won't. Like, how does that even? I don't understand how that works.
Are they just playing lip service and trying to do the right thing and get themselves some good publicity off the back of it, so they don't so they're not kind of seen as being the bad people, the bad people. You know, it's just. I think it's all down to. Yeah, and you know, I can't kind of condone, you know, or condemn the way that your culture is over there, but the right to bear arms is endemically the issue here,
Yes.
and it's so ingrained within the culture of your country. It's not a simple issue to address. You know, people will die to have their gun, won't they? You know, but that is such an alien concept to us here in Europe. You know, we have our police force. Yeah, we have special armed police, obviously, especially now. But you know, our police force are armed. You know, we haven't got guns in our houses. You know, we don't have the murder rate across your nation. You know, which is one of the highest in the world. You know, and it's and until this issue is addressed, and it comes down to the fundamental issue of the amendments and the civil liberty and the rights, which are so old and need to be, yeah. And that's the problem. That's the problem. It's not a problem that's going to go away overnight either. So,
fortunately not.
But you know, it's a terrible situation to see it on the news, and it just happens time and time again. You know, and it's disgraceful. It is disgraceful, and I hope the only way it's going to change, the only way the political system is going to change, is through younger people becoming more involved and being more active and engaged with the process. I think for the past 20 or 30 years, you know, the media and the politicians have actively influenced and tried to get the public to be disengaged with the political process. You know, It suits them fine for people just to, you know, go to work, earn their $20 an hour, whatever it is, and go home and watch telly and consume and go through that process and not engage and question what's going on in the society. And that's happened for about the past 20, 30 years. But I think the one thing that's happening now with the things that are happening in the world around us, with this rise of the right wing and these issues about gun control, I think people are starting to challenge the status quo more so. And, you know, the young people will and can make a change. And that is how it will happen, is through, you know, them standing up and, if not them, the following generation. It'll take time, but, yeah, I think you'll get there. I think there is hope. I'd like to think there is.
I would too. And the thing is like we talk about that. We talk about how history in some ways repeating itself too, as far as where there was a lot of apathy in the States, you know, 30 years prior to it happening now. Where you have this wake up, and then it kind of went down, now it's back up. And I think we kind of see some of the same things in the music industry, like right around the turn of the century, as the rise of digital media became a thing. The industry didn't know how to handle it. I think a lot of bands, you know, there was this thought that there was be an explosion of bands, there's too much to sift through. And although now that may be somewhat true, I do think that with the types of media out there and social media being what it is and the way it's been aggregated, you still have the best will still rise to the top, and certainly Memoriam is an example of that. I think that if there were no good ways to get information out there and to share good music, that Memoriam wouldn't necessarily get as fair a shake as it's getting. Something with Bolt Thrower that always kind of perplexed me is how few times you guys came over to the States live. Is that something that with Memoriam you're looking to perhaps fix on a more worldwide basis, or what are the plans with that? Because I'm kind of curious with this fast-paced schedule you have going.
Yeah, I mean, we are not a band that's going to ever go on long tours. You know, we've made that conscious decision from the very first point. You know, we've all got our own lives, we've all got jobs, we're very grounded. I've got young children, we've got responsibilities outside of the band. So we've decided that really, when we do gigs, they're going to be on our terms. We sort our own shows, we book everything through ourselves, and we play things on our terms, really. So we're never going to go and jump in a tour coach and go on the road for 6 weeks, ever. We've done that. It was great in Europe. Fine, fantastic, got the T-shirt, read the book. Thank you very much. That doesn't really hold any glory or fascination for us at this point in our lives. So what we're doing is really just selecting, where we want to play, on our terms. And generally, we're just doing a short haul, kind of like we're doing like 3 or 4 gigs on the trot over a long weekend in Europe. That seems to be the main thing. We're playing club shows, a mixture of club shows, larger corporate festivals, and smaller independent festivals. So we kind of got a mix there. We've got about 30 odd shows lined up for this year. Mainly obviously in mainland Europe, but yeah, we'd like to get back over to America, but it's just very, do a handful of shows, but it's logistically and financially quite difficult to do that. You've got the whole visa process, which is a nightmare to go through. So really, you need to have a festival to jump onto that kind of covers all those costs, and then tag on some club shows or independent festival shows on after that. So it's working it out economically, financially, and fitting in with our schedule. We haven't had any real offers from America at all since we started yet. We've had a couple of prospective chances.
You would think with the interest that like MDF, Maryland Death Fest, showed in Bolt Thrower years back, and the shows that followed after that, you would think Memoriam would be a shoo-in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had no real kind of confirmation or interest from Ryan and those guys down at Maryland.
Well,
that would be the option too.
Because it's one of those things that it's become an institution. I've never been to one, and the only one I ever showed any interest in going to was the one that Bolt Thrower did. Did not make it because of work obligations and so forth. And the never ending. If you were to do a search for Bolt Thrower in any of my social media, it would be every couple years me saying, "Hey, if you're going to this Bolt Thrower show, get me a shirt." Every single time. And it was just kind of this never-ending kind of a thing. So I imagine my surprise when Memoriam, being signed a Nuclear Blast, now has much more readily available merchandise. Was that a conscious decision, or what? What kind of prompted that? Because Bolt Thrower was kind of notoriously DIY.
So yeah, things work. Certain things work really well with Bolt Thrower, and certain things didn't. And we were very conscious with Memoriam to use the things that work well. So we kind of still retain a lot of the DIY ethics of booking things ourselves and doing it, the way we want to do things. But one of the things with the merchandise, it kind of almost kind of grew to the point where it was great. You could only get the t-shirts at the gigs, which is brilliant, which meant we could buy more, sell more at higher volumes. So it was cheaper for us to buy. You bought more and sell them more, and we did great doing that. But the fact is, we only did half a dozen shows a year, and we only played maybe 1 or 2 territories in a year. So there's a whole world out there that were desperate to get shirts. So they either A, turned to people that come to the shows and bought 2 or 3 and sold them on eBay for massively inflated prices, or B, turned to bootleggers where they were freely available through, which was a constant battle with those as well. So in many respects it was good, but it also was didn't work in that respect. So we made the conscious decision to make our merchandise available. The first thing that I did was set up a website, a big cartel site. I run the merchandise. I do it all hands on. I really enjoy that aspect of the band. We did that originally when we first started out in Bolt Thrower. I ran all the merchandise things. So yeah, we do it all hands on, and we've let Nuclear Blast get involved as well. So the stuff is freely available to anyone that wants one. So we haven't got this whole issue of bootleggers and inflated eBay prices that are we just destroy the whole point really and the ethos of it. So yeah, we've kind of used the things that work and change the things that didn't work so well. And you've got to learn from your experiences of the past. It makes you who you are today.
Certainly true. So what, if anything, since starting Memoriam for you, are goals that have come to mind after starting it? Like, what new opportunities or new ideas has this band grown for you?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's yeah, one of the first things we did when we sat down, because the original concept was just to, as I said previously, go to the rehearsal room maybe once a week, have a few beers with your friends, have a laugh, create a bit of fun, a bit of joy, and maybe knock out some old cover songs, some classics, bands that inspired us to start and want to be in a band in the first place. So, do some Sacrilege songs, some Discharge songs, Anti-Sex, Crass, Amoebics, all those kind of songs that were important to us when we first started out. And it very kind of like quickly changed from that kind of concept. But all we really imagined us doing was maybe doing that and maybe doing a few local shows, doing these cover versions, and maybe ultimately releasing our own 7-inch, which featured these, classic songs. And that was really all we wanted to do. So it's kind of grown from that and deviated from that massively. That idea is still in my head, though. I still would very much like to do an album of cover versions once we've gone through the trilogy process that we're going through now. So, but other things that were important to us were things like, we sat down and said, well, what do we want to achieve? What do we want to achieve? What, if it was to go great, what would we want to do? And one of the things Scott said that he wanted to have he wanted to have an album cover done by Dan Seagrave. So I think that is a box that has been thoroughly ticked quite considerably.
Yes.
But also it's all about for us to play maybe territories that we hadn't played before. I still would very much like to play in Japan. I've never played in Japan, so we've still got a lot of things that we want to achieve. But if we have managed to achieve a lot of the things in this very short time that we've been doing it, so the main aspect was to just have some fun. That really should be the main thing for anyone at any stage, at any band. That's the bottom line, and we've fulfilled that by the bucket load, and we continue to do so at every show that we do. The chemistry we've got as a band is something very special. It's something you can't buy, you can't create. It's something that flows from us as individuals, as friends, as close friends for such a long time. And that's what really works well. We perform very well as a live band, and I think that comes across in our performances. And the people that see us, engage with that, and they thrive off that. And in turn, we thrive off the feedback that they give us, and that's what makes it such a special experience.
And I think it definitely speaks volumes that you guys have taken so much negativity and turn it into a positive, which is, granted, it's a well-worn theme in death metal, but I think it was never more literal than it has been with you lot, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it shines a light and it shows other people, that what you can achieve, you can move forward when things are at the lowest ebb. You can move ahead and move forward in your life and create things which have some joy to them. And that's really what we're all about.
Absolutely. So, folks, Memoriam's new albums, The Silent Vigil, comes out March 23rd, 2018, through Nuclear Blast Records worldwide. Is there anything more, Karl, that you want us to know about this record moving forward?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'd like to say thank you to everyone that supported us so far and has been a part of our lives over the past 30 years and continue to be so. And it's very important for us. We appreciate that we're only in this privileged position through the support we've received off people, and we'd just like to say thanks for that and having the opportunity to be able to do this. It's we are all, apart from Scott, we're all 50 plus, and to be able to do this at this point in our lives is absolutely amazing, and we're having such an incredible time, and so glad that the journey for us is continuing forward, and long may that last. And go and buy the album, go and have a listen to it, and have a listen to the lyrics. I'm very proud of the way that the lyrics have come across on the new album. It's going to it's going to upset a lot of people out there, hopefully. So
that is the plan.
that's my intention. Yes, let's rock the rotten apple cart.
There you go. Well, Karl, as much as you appreciate us sharing in the journey, we appreciate that you guys, picked yourselves up and continued that journey. And thank you for taking this journey with me today on the Grindhead podcast. I sure do appreciate you, mate.
It's an absolute pleasure, Jim. And one of the pivotal points of this interview that really meant something to me was the fact that our first album had some meaning to you when you lost your mom as well. So that's for me, getting that feedback from you was fantastic. So thanks for providing that for me. Anytime,
mate, and you're welcome back anytime.
Yes, I look forward to speaking to you around about this time next year when we release the next album.
Absolutely. It's a date, and we'll do it the first time, not the fifth time.
Absolutely.
All right, mate, I appreciate you.
Jim. You have a good evening, mate.
You too.
Good afternoon, where you are.
Cheers.
Take care.